Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. My topic of discussion, building digital resilience. Joining me to discuss it today are John Pelton, Senior Director, Managed Detection and Response with Optiv, and Anthony Pierce, Field CTO with Splunk. Tony, John, thanks so much for making time for me today.
Hey, happy to be here.
Okay, digital resilience. When we talk about that in today's very digitally transformed world, what exactly do we mean?
Well, to be quite honest, most people don't really know what it means, right? It's like the Nirvana thing, right? But really, digital resilience is like the thing of it like a flexible. I always think of it like the willow that needs to bend and bend back in the middle of the storm, right? And when you think about digital resilience, everything is data nowadays, and so you have to build an ecosystem that can actually support that data, right? And then that keep that secure, right? A lot of times people think that's the security side. I'm a cybersecurity dude, but it really is an ecosystem problem, right? You gotta have your hardware, you gotta have you have your CTO, everybody working in tandem to make a good digital resilience. And to be honest, you can't do anything without visibility. John?
Yeah, love that. And I think to me, it comes down to really defense in depth, not only from a detective control perspective, but as well as the capabilities to rapidly respond with actions to stop compromises, really from further progressing, right? Preventing it before we're actually getting to a state where revenue is impacted. You can't only trust your EDR tool or the education of your employees regarding threats. I think layers really need to be strategically implemented and managed to ensure the utmost resilience, and really also focusing on processes, procedures, lessons learned, continuous improvement. Those are all key components from a digital resilience perspective.
Okay,
And I
now
love
here's
what
the.
you said. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please, Tony.
I love what you said there. A lot of people don't talk about defense in depth anymore, right? We use NIST, we use MITRE, we use all these different firms talk about defense in depth. Us old school guys who've been around for a minute. We came up through the ranks and we used defense in depth when we built stuff out. And so we built resilience. But what happened is organizations and data got so cheap and organizations got so large that everybody became siloed. And so they stopped talking to each other, right? And so we forgot that defense in depth matrix that we all need to work together to have a truly resilient system.
Okay, perfect follow-up question to what you've said then. In this enterprise today with all these silos, who in the enterprise is actually responsible for resilience?
I'll let go. I would first. I'll let John go.
Sure. So I think that there's likely an easy argument to be made for individual contributors all the way up through the board. However, there's really two key main roles. One being your CISO, right? Being overall strategy for digital resilience, cybersecurity, ensuring that you can detect and respond to threats, as well as your CIO, right? The overall IT strategy organization there. They both play a crucial role to ensure that the infrastructure is robust, scalable, and resilient. But really, I think that there needs to be a really strong partnership and collaboration between anybody at the C level there to really manage an effective digital resilience program. If either team is not fully committed, it's going to create friction and inefficiencies. Many times I've seen IT deploy new servers without informing the security team, creating a scramble of activity as they're now detecting activity that deviates from a healthy baseline, creating false positives. Alternatively, I've seen security controls put in place that hamper IT's ability, causing degradation when they're trying to deploy patches. So those are situations that can ultimately increase the risk as servers are remaining unpatched and vulnerable. So really, I don't think it's just one person. I think it's really a key partnership at that C level, specifically around CIO, CISO, CTO.
I like what you said there, right? And like I would say that everybody kind of reports to CIO, but the key persons when I explain this is the CTO and the CISO, right? And so the CISO is reactive. I see something, I do something. The CTO is proactive. He has to build with everything embedded in it so it can be resilient, right? The whole goal is to be being resilient, and so build so that and you have to incorporate security. I love what John said there when you're talking about we build out. If anybody's ever looked at security pockets on the line, it's this network guys always hate us because we're about like 65% of the entire bandwidth because we're continually trying to defend the net and we're basically locking out our users to do it. Right? I think I told a friend of mine a long time ago. He's a general now. He's super important. And I said, "Hey, I can make you have the most secure network in the world." I said, "It'll never be hacked." And he goes, "What?" And I bet a beer on it because that's the way it's done. And then I said, "Well, just get rid of all your users." All right. And he was like, "I owe you a beer." The truth is that the resilience piece is that you got to be reactive and you got to be proactive, right? We need to be able to see it and we have to do something about it, but we also need to get ahead of it and build with security in mind. And we all need to communicate, right? That's the key thing. Silos just break defense in depth every day.
All right, Tony, this is worth a beer as well. Why do you find it so increasingly hard to be resilient, particularly at scale?
Lack of communication. Right. I will say that there's all these really great tools out there, right? And everybody will tell you, oh, like we are the easy button. The truth is there's no easy button, right? You have to communicate. I always say tools are great at communicating, all right? So we use tools to facilitate communication because people are terrible at it. Right. And so we tend to forget that we've been talking about defense in depth as it equals resilience, right? But the truth is you have to have visibility to be able to do that. You cannot defend what you cannot see. But like what John said, if you build out a server and it's not secure or if it's not being monitored, that's a problem too. Right. You need to build with security in mind. And the problem is that we have all these systems and everybody it's getting growing and growing and growing and data has become cheaper and cheaper as we've moved to cloud community, is that we failed to communicate. I worked one case where I was like, "Why didn't you guys know this was there?" And I talked to the network guys. He goes, "Well, I gave him a sticky note on his monitor when I added that subnet." Right. The guy was like, "Well, I lost the sticky note." Right there. You got to have that visibility.
Absolutely. And I think it's a common struggle that we see our clients experience. And one thing that we're always hammering home is golden baseline images that are tailored to provide that telemetry out of the box, right? Understanding what is going on in your environment is really challenging if you don't know what you actually have in your environment. So kind of building with that security, Anthony, to your point, making sure that right out of the gate, they're configured to provide telemetry to a central point. It's key. Right. The other end of that problem, though, is also monitoring all of that data as it evolves. If you don't have robust processes and procedures and the team ready to respond to it, it quickly gets overwhelming. And something that we really try to help our clients out with being a service provider is let us handle that initial load. Right. We've done this inside and out. We have the muscle memory to do it. Let us take care of all of the initial components so that your team can focus on the strategic processes, something that's actually generating revenue for your organization. So it's making sure that you build with security first, getting all of that insights, and then handling that insights at that central layer so that you have good visibility of what's going on within your environment.
I agree with that. And I go one more step further. I always say to the right skill set, to the right role, to the right outcome, right? And a lot of times when we're building out, we try to offload some of the work so that we can actually get to that. Like Optiv is a great example, right? And we offload some of it so we can get to it. As we build resilient systems, we're becoming more fusion, right? When I say that, it means that you have to have the right niche to look at. A cloud engineer is totally different than a network engineer, right? You can't, back in the day, we could say, hey, cyber investigator, he can see everything. Well, be honest, a lot of us can, but we've grown up and we've grown with the technology, but we're super expensive, right? Because we've gotten to that point. The lower level guys, they didn't get that chance to grow, right? And so you have to grow them, but it's becoming more and more niche. A network security guy and data analytics guy, a cybersecurity guy, all those are niche skill sets so that you can get to time on target, right? It's in cybersecurity, we only have two metrics. I don't care what you say. It's time to detection and time to mitigation. Everything else doesn't really matter to us, right? Because we have to defend. We're the warriors on the battlefield, and we need to be able to attack the bad guy, right? And so,
gentlemen, talk to me about disruptions. How does one prepare for them, whether they're expected or unexpected?
Yeah, I think the standardized visibility, as we just talked about, I think robust detections are key. I think from my perspective, and maybe most importantly, though, is really defined straightforward processes and procedures on how to respond. When situations emerge that especially put your availability at risk, there's naturally increased pressure which can lead to mistakes. And something that I've seen is really clear to the point processes can help reduce that risk, right? You're keeping everybody on the same page. They feel comfortable that they're making the right decisions and they're evaluating the right components. And you're also preventing the times from spending time maybe troubleshooting a red herring. I mean, it goes without saying, but those processes, procedures, playbooks need to be tabletop regularly to ensure that they're prepared. But you're not going to be able to account for everything, but at least having the processes defined on these are the things that you need to do and look at can help keep everybody on track. As otherwise, you might get some really creative minds, but they might lead you in the wrong direction there.
John, you and I are going to have a sit down and have a beer because we grade most of the time, right? It always falls down to people, process, and technology, right? Every vendor in the world is going to be like, hey, like, here's this great technology, and we're like Shangri-La, right? It doesn't work like that, right? You need to have the right people. And my people need to have the policies that back them up. I've worked cases where the incident responder or the engineer weren't communicating, and the engineers and the incident responders were more worried about their job than they were about the organization. And by the time that they got through that communication lag, ransomware had taken over their network, right? Because ransomware doesn't care, right? So you have to have policies to protect your people so that they can make a decision and they feel comfortable in their roles to actually be, recommend a solution. You got to have the right processes, and whether a lot of those can be automated. I'm a big automation guy. I see the smaller the teams, more the automation, bigger the teams, more targeted automation, right? And that's kind of the role, right? And then, but you also have to have your I would say your SIM technology, your visibility technology integrated with your ticketing and your case management system, right? Because that's that process is going to help you. And then for technology, right? We can buy the best tools in the world, and what I see is that we have these great tools, but people only use about 10% of their capability, right? That's as far as I get because operations keep coming at them. And so they've got to get on target. They got to keep going. They got to keep going. And so I think that we really need to spend time on understanding the technology. I do tell people the more tools increases risk. It doesn't reduce risk. You need to buy tools to the capability and the outcome, right? Making sure that you have to have that visibility piece across all of your different tools and to see if it's using and do a capability mapping so you can reduce your reduce cost for one and reduce your risk. There's a saying that you can always reduce risk by implementing controls, right? Which isn't always tools, by the way, but you can never reduce threat because it's ever evolving.
Let's talk about the tools. How can some of the traditional tools, I'm thinking SIM, for instance, be incorporated with some of the emerging tech and expertise to actually boost one's digital resilience?
I'll take that one start, if you don't mind, John.
Yeah,
well,
please.
I would say the reason why I partner with Splunk and the reason why I work here now, right? I've only been here 10 months, so they haven't fired me yet. So I've still got a couple of months, right, before the year. It's just that we pretty much talk to anything. Right. I haven't found anything that we haven't been able to talk to. Right. And so when you bring in all these new tools, you have to have that visibility. Right. And so that you can actually see, like the first thing I go into when I do a lot of IR stuff and I help out a lot of people. The first thing I ask is, what is your business critical applications? Like, are you protecting what's important first? Right. Do you have a good change management system? And they're looking at me like, aren't you Splunk? And I was like, yeah, all of that integrates into the SIM. Right. I always say that Splunk is not just a SIM, right? We have an ES suite for that. We're a data analytics platform that does security, right? So we can bring everything in, and it's all by log ingestions and log retention, right? And so your answer to your question is that you got to see everything, and we can pretty much talk to anything. And then we're very innovative and we're very fluid when we build out our solution. Go ahead, John.
No, absolutely. And I think maybe to build on that, it's really mutual buy-in on the importance of that visibility across both the IT and the security teams. Well, in some organizations and some platforms, it might be difficult to extract all of the value out of the data. I think Splunk has a fantastic use case from a visibility and a performance perspective on the IT side. And right next to that can be the security detections, the risk-based detections, the threat hunting, right? So when both the IT and security teams can extract value from the same telemetry and data within the same tool, I think it's much easier to get buy-in to ensure that everything is logged as expected as the organization continues to evolve. right? If other tools are perceived as not providing value for the IT operation side, it's going to be that much harder to get them fully committed to the strategy to ensure that all systems are interacting with, are providing that telemetry, so that you can continue to run that mature, resilient program there. Right. And I think once you've gotten that commitment to the organization, you do have all of your tools logging, right? That's when you start to be able to build really robust detections and being able to build out the monitoring component 24/7, 365 as that first line of defense, looking for those indicators ahead of activities that eventually lead to service degradation, exploitation, and the loss of revenue for our clients.
And I'll go one step further too. Is like when I first started in cybersecurity, I hated the regulators and I hated the auditors. Right? They just took away anything that my analysts weren't spending time on threat. Right? I'm like, you're increasing risk. Right? My guys don't want to do PowerPoint. Right? But the compliance guys would always come in and they say, hey, here's my checklist, you got to do all this. And so I would also say, when we're doing all this, when we're working in a holistic system, feed all that data into compliance and regulatory, just automate it, right? Answer those questions so that you're compliant over time. When you think about the insurance industry, you think about the Fed, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to come in and they're going to audit you if anything bad happens. And even if you're in the financial, I think one of my friends said he gets audited 272 times a year because he's a financial system. He's a huge bank. He has an entire team just to answer that question. And I was like, well, what a waste of time that is, right? Why don't we just automate it? All right, the data is all there. So one is to do the incident response and threat, but also let's make sure that our people are working like they should be, right? And then automate what we can when we think about like compliance reporting and regulatory, because at the end of the day, if you don't do it while you're building out, they're going to come back and they're going to drive you nuts anyway, right?
So, flip side of the tooling situation, let's talk about the workforce. How can we address some of our workforce challenges and at the same time make sure that we've got access to A-list talent?
Yeah, I think we're seeing A-list talent being continuing increasingly difficult to find, right? And to solve that, I think that there needs to be a multi-pronged approach. You need to look for strong team leads that are going to be able to do that coaching and mentoring. And then really you need to be investing in your people through consistent training enablement. And Anthony mentioned this earlier and I loved it, but really most importantly, give them the opportunities to work on those interesting projects that are interesting to them, that are outside of their comfort zone, right? That's going to allow them to grow. That's going to make them really interested and passionate about what they're doing. It might be difficult up front, but giving them that opportunity, I think, is you're going to start to see people get back up to the A-list talent component. And I think the biggest thing to that, really, to make that a reality, given that we're in IT and security, is making sure that that there is time to do so. It's really difficult, as just we're so incredibly stretched thin, just given the number of operational challenges that might come in at any point. So that's also something that our organization at Optiv is helping our clients with, is they'll outsource their initial triage to us and then free up their full-time employees to focus on growing their talent, and then adding the value to their business through their strategic projects.
Man, I love, like, John, again, we're speaking, you know what I mean? Right? It's like the Godfather, I love you, right? I'll tell you is that you're not, I think the key component there is mentorship, right? Is that we need to be able to mentor our youth. Like when I was the sim leader over in EY, right? One of the things I did when I hired is I would hire a person and then I would assign them a mentor. Right. And I would say, you don't have, that would be like your technical mentor for the first year to help them. And I would tell the mentor, I'm going to rate you on the fact of helping you grow the younger people. Right. Because you need to be held accountable too. And the younger people, like I always say, engineers love to build, analysts love to learn. Right. A lot of times people are not motivated, but necessarily, like, we all like money, let's be honest. Right. But they're not always motivated by money. They like to build, they like to do innovative things, they like to be heard. Right. And I say we have to listen to them too. They're the guys on the ground, right? They understand this stuff and they're trying to do better. Right. So you pay them back by education, right? And send them to a couple of education choices. Don't just say, hey, go online and learn it. Right. I said cybersecurity is one of the few places where you actually have to, I think I spend an average of 2 hours a day reading. It drives my wife crazy, but she likes TV. I like words, right? It's just the way it is. but I have to stay up on what I'm doing, right? To your point, not everybody's at a tier 5. I mean, I can go from the kernel to the cloud because I've been doing it for so long, but not everybody is. So we have to enable. And I spend a huge amount of my time training and enabling other people, and so that we can raise the entire up, right? When you talk about talent, you have to grow your talent, right? You can't just say, hey, look, what great guy out there, because red teamers think totally different than blue teamers, right? Purple team, everybody has to. The one thing I was following, because I'm very passionate about this, is that key word. I always find that the first thing I do when I bring somebody in is I have this little exercise to determine what is it they're very passionate about, right? And I try to align them to their passion, right? I know that's crazy talk, but I find that they become better at their jobs. Work becomes a hobby. And once it becomes a hobby, right, they perform better, right? They'll stay longer. When bad things happen, they're the ones who say they're digging in to help you. They're not just saying, I'm clocking out at 5 o'clock. Because in cybersecurity, you don't get to clock out at 5 o'clock, right? There's always something to learn. There's always something. So those are my key takeaways. I think John and I are in agreement is mentor people, help them establish their passion, because as they grow, they're not going to go like this, right? They start finding the key areas that they enjoy, and also give them the flexibility of say, hey, I want to start as an engineer, but maybe I want to move into an analyst role, right? Because those are two different roles. You just sit there and say, well, let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do to enable you and educate you so you can actually see where the data is going. And so those are I think that's the answer to the question.
Love it.
Tony, John, let's talk about your partnership. How are Splunk and Optiv coming together to help customers adapt to today's threats and, of course, to be more resilient?
Yeah, I think kind of going on the training and enablement component, right? We have a close partnership on training tracks, making sure that our teams at Optiv are aligned with what the capabilities are out of the platform. We're able to also build together supplemental integrations to extract additional value out of the platforms from a threat detection response perspective. We go to market together, right? When our teams are jointly selling, we're hearing from our clients not only where do they need help from a technology perspective, but as well as the human service element. Right. It's great to have all of these tools and technology, but if you don't have the people to run it and maintain it and interact with it, they're not going to be able to extract all of the value out of their investment. And I think that this collaboration and partnership that we have here, it's allowing us to position that whole package of really effective tools tailored to a client's need, as well as the service combination to go on it and help them maintain that so that we can effectively manage their threat landscape, improving their resilience. And really tailor something that's to their need. And we're not just throwing a tool at them and saying this will solve everything. So it's the combination there of training the right tool at the right time, and then the right people leveraging that tool to extract the value for our clients.
I also say, like, I love the word partnership, but I like alliance better, right? So Optiv and us and Splunk have an amazing alliance, right? What we know, they know. I always tell people it takes a village, not a villager, right? And all these traditional roles, we have all these vendors and everybody's like, oh, I don't like you, right? It doesn't work like that anymore, right? Because we go back to that initial word, defense in depth, right? Optiv and Splunk naturally do it. We're very outcome based, right? What are we trying to accomplish? And so is Optiv. So there's that natural synergy right there, right? They do some things that we don't do. We do some things that they don't do, but working together, we have a better together story across the playing field.
To that end, how do the two partners leverage each other's natural advantages, Tony?
Well, they use my natural good looks to do all of this, right? So that's how they leverage Splunk, right? Because that's just the way we roll. No, I'm just saying we really do. We play off each other really well, right? For example, here we are on this webinar together, right? I would have never done it if Optiv had not had talked to me about it, all right? And this is natural synergy. It's that better together, and we play off each other. We do events together. I think I'm going to be at AWS, and everywhere I go, they are. And it's the vice versa. And we actually say, like, a lot of times too, I will say, as a field CTO, I don't really do sales. I kind of just help folks, and I'll come in and they'll tell me about some of their challenges, right? One of the CISOs told me, like, oh, Tony, you're like an unpaid consultant. I love it. But my job is to give them recommendations. And then I was like, hey, maybe you should look at Optiv, right? They've got a solid where we're integrated with them. And then that's kind of how we play off each other. I like to call it the outcome-based approach. John?
Yeah, and I think it's really also our teams partnering, our diverse teams at those many different levels, right? When you mentioned earlier, kind of the kernel to the cloud, I see a lot of that between our organizations as well, and we're able to achieve that through common selling motions and really objectives, right? Your team is engineering a great stack from a SIEM and an observability space. And we're also able to leverage that tool with everything else that Optiv does as well, our professional services around managing firewalls and endpoint and identity. What that allows us to do working together is provide feedback to Splunk in terms of where do we need additional help to extract value out of the tool. And then we're using all of our SMEs across all of those other domains to help drive technology problems forward, integrating all of that together and going deep in a very specific tool, and then trying to extract that to an improvement into Splunk. So I'd say the diverse partnering at all of the many different levels that we have really allows us to lean on each other on, hey, is the platform able to do this, or I was able to extract this out of a specific tool. Can we maybe get this up at the Splunk level so that we have centralized visibility there in this feature and functionality? I've seen us continue to grow in that space, and I think that's really helpful in meeting our clients where they need us.
Last question, gentlemen. Do you have some examples, specific examples of how you helped some of your partners to grow their resilience, your customers rather?
Yeah, I can give an example from about 2 weeks ago. We had a client that came to us. We are co-managing their Splunk for them, so we're monitoring the threats that it detects. We're tailoring the platform. They had a homegrown application that was experiencing a form of a denial of service attack. The ultimate solution was they needed to re-architect the way that their WAF was configured to help prevent it before it actually gets to that homegrown application. But that unfortunately was multiple weeks away, and there were cases of this where it was driving loss of revenue for them. I would say this was an area where Splunk's flexibility in terms of not having a closed ecosystem made it very easy to tailor the ingest and the telemetry so that we were able to then create patterns, detections on patterns, and we were able to then automate getting that information over to their IT team for them to go remediate an issue with the end target account that was being leveraged through that application. So that was something that we saw some really rapid success in, and I think in other more closed ecosystem type tools that wouldn't have been possible, but we were able to take something where they were dreading weeks until resolution from being able to reduce the risk around this to ultimately what turned into hours and much more confidence in detecting that moving forward.
I think you said it best. I don't think I could say anything better than that.
Tony, John, grateful for your time and your insight today. Thanks so much for spending time talking with me about digital resilience.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
This was great, right? This is a great way to start the day. And, I think the big takeaway is that there's always a better together story, all right? Don't try to do it alone because you will fail. And two, when you think about digital resilience, don't forget defense in depth. You can't do one without the other. You make sure you're communicating not only with your partners and your vendors, right, but also communicate internally, right? Because you will never achieve, right? We can't be reactive forever. We need to start being more proactive, and the only way we can do that is to talk each other. And the third thing I would say is like, understand visibility. You can't defend what you can't see, but you also can't manage what you can't see, right? And so make sure that visibility is a key component of your building out into your journey.
Well said. Again, the topic is building digital resilience. You just heard from John Pelton, Senior Director, Managed Detection and Response with Optiv, and Anthony Pierce, Field CTO with Splunk. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you for giving us your time and attention today.